All right, we're back on our selection topic for this week. In the previous video, we talked about each of the various selection tools in Photoshop, how to use them, and then a few other selection basics. So I'm going to open up a new image in Photoshop. Let's just drag and drop this logo for a hamburger company, Shake Shack. And we're going to use our selection tools to select it. Now, we already talked about what we'd probably want to use in this case. Lasso tool would not be the best because this one has a lot of hard edges, and you're just not going to get a good selection doing that by hand. Maybe if you zoomed into the pixel level and spent hours, but I'm not going to do that. You could try the rectangular selection tool, and it might be good for certain things, like the top of this E. I could add to it by creating more selections down there, but that's not going to be perfect either. There are easier way to do things. The polygonal lasso tool would do a pretty good job at this if I wanted it to, but still, it's just not going to be the perfect tool for this job. Command or Control D to get rid of my selection there. Quick selection tool does a pretty okay job. I'm just holding Shift and clicking and dragging to add to our selection, but it's still just not the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the Magic Wand tool. This is what we ended with in the previous video. We talked about contiguous and uncontiguous, how that works. If you keep contiguous checked, it will take a little while because your items that you're clicking on have to be touching. But if you don't check contiguous, it will automatically select everything in the whole document that is that same color. And now if I want to select also this green part here, I can either hold Shift or make sure that the second option there is selected to add to my selection. It will automatically add that to my selection. But for some items, like this one, it's easier to select the background than it is to select the actual object itself. And that's because our background is one entire solid color. So if I wanted to select this logo, even though that was pretty easy, it would actually be easier to select the background first, still using the Magic Wand tool, because the background is completely, entirely black. So all I have to do is click one time on the black background, and it automatically selects all the black in the image completely. Now, if I were to do that with contiguous checked, you'll notice that it misses a couple places. It misses in the middle of the A, in the middle of the A over here, and then it also misses inside of the little burger vector icon right there in the middle. But if I uncheck contiguous and click it, it will automatically select all of the background there. Now you'll notice if I were to drag this on top of a new image, like let's open up a different picture, open up this one. I'm not sure why we'd put this on there, but if I were to click and drag this over there, I don't have what I want to have selected. Looks like we're making a little bit of a clipping mess there. We'll drag that to the trash. So here's where the little trick comes in. If you're trying to make a selection and it's easier to select the background than it is to select the subject, what you want to do is to first select the background like we've done, and then you have to get the opposite, or what Photoshop calls the inverse, of your selection. And you can do that through the Select menu. So I have the background selected. If I now go to Select and then hit Inverse, or Command or Control Shift I, it will automatically give me the opposite of my selection. So now, if I go to my Move tool, click in my selection and drag it, I'm actually moving the part that I had selected instead of the opposite. So we've added our Shake Shack logo right over here on top of this picture. Speaking of this picture, let's do the same thing. Should have got a different one that might work better. Here we go. Drag and drop this. You can also hit File Open, or you can copy and paste images in Photoshop too. So this picture, let's say that I wanted this hand. I guess these people playing rock, paper, scissors. Your rectangular marquee tool, not going to be the best job because it's not made of rectangles. You could try your quick selection. It's going to mess up on the tattoo, but there we go. And actually, quick selections did a pretty good job. Oh, and it's not selecting anymore because it is switched to minus. I have to hit plus in my options bar. Click and drag, and we've got a pretty good selection. Let's zoom in. Now, it's not perfect. But it's doing a pretty okay job. You normally have to zoom in and then spend a little bit of time fine-tuning your selections if you want something that's going to be really good. And actually, that did a pretty good job. It selected the hand. We can now move the hand if we wanted to, independently of the rest of the document. You can tell that we missed one part. I did not notice that. I should have noticed, when I zoomed in, I should have noticed that there were marching ants all around the fingernail there, which meant that I did not have it selected, so I could have held Shift and drawn across that in order to adjust it. But let's try something else. Let's try our magic wand tool. And we'll click in the background there. So it selected everything and then some. It selected a little bit of the inside of their hands. And that's because contiguous was checked. Let's uncheck contiguous. Let's check contiguous. And if we click now, it does a pretty good job of just selecting only the background. We could then get the opposite of our selection by going up to the select menu and hitting inverse. And now we've got our hands that we could drag on top of whatever image we wanted to. We're just trying to throw a bunch of hands here. Command or Control T, stretch it out till it reaches the edge, and there we go. Let's talk about something else. Let's close this out. Close that out too. And we'll close this out. Okay. I'm going to find a picture. Actually, let's do this one. And we'll open this basketball. So if I just wanted to quickly select the basketball, of course we think that it would be fastest to use the elliptical marquee tool, but I'm having a tough time to get a perfect selection. I happen to know that if you want to select a perfect circle, you start where the top corner, if you drew a line kind of just right at the top, and to drew a line at the left-hand side, right where they would meet, if you start right there, and you hold Shift, it'll do a pretty good job of selecting almost a perfect circle. In this case, it did a pretty okay job. But we already know that this item, if we're trying to select the basketball, it would be easiest for us to select it based on selecting the background. We could try using our magic wand tool and clicking around the inside of the basketball, but it's not getting us the perfect selection. The quick selection tool probably would do a pretty good job of getting a selection, but it's taken a while. But if I just use the magic wand tool and instead of selecting the actual object, if I just click on the white space and then hit select and then inverse, I now have the basketball selected. That was very quick, very easy, and I could move that basketball wherever I wanted to. But if we have an option like this, where there's not as much of a high contrast from your object against the background, let's zoom in a little bit. If we're trying to select the basketball here, then it's not going to be easier to select the background with your magic wand tool. You can see what it's doing there. Command or Control D to deselect. We could try with our elliptical marquee tool. And it does a pretty good job. I'm holding Shift, but I probably don't have to. But let's try this one with the quick selection tool. We're just going to click and drag until we get a pretty good selection. Then we can zoom in and we can modify our selection. So if we don't want our hands there, or don't want the guy's fingers, we're going to switch over to the lasso tool, hold Alt, circle what you don't like, or come up here and hit the Subtract from Selection button in your options bar. Just circle what you don't like, and it will get rid of it from your selection. So our lab work for this week is to do what we're doing right now, and to select an object in a picture, and to get rid of the rest of it. So if I ever have a selection, and this is going to lead us into next week, if I have a selection in a picture and I want to get rid of everything else, once I have my selection, all I have to do is hit the mask button. Everything else will disappear, and you'll be left with just your one item. So we just selected the basketball. Let's undo that. If I wanted to select this whole guy, I would first have to click and drag, probably on him with this quick selection tool. We got his fingers again. We're just clicking and dragging. He's going to have a hard time probably with his hair against the background, but we'll see. Here we go. Got the other guy's hand, but we know how to fine-tune our selections. We are just clicking and dragging. Miss some of his fingers, so we'll either hold Shift or make sure we've got the plus icon up there. And if we want to remove some items, we can just switch to the lasso tool. Alt will remove. items from your selection. I'm just holding Alt, circling everything that I don't want that is currently involved in this selection. I'm going to go back to my quick selection tool, hold Alt here, hold Shift to add, hold Alt to remove. A good selection takes time, and we're giving this the time it deserves. Actually, that did a pretty okay job. Always a good idea to look all around the edges of your selection. Okay. Now, if I was not done with this, if I wanted to spend more time with it, but I had to leave my computer, I would, of course, save this as a PSD in order to keep my layers. But before I saved it as a PSD, I would save my selection. We'll just call this, I don't know that guy's name, so we'll call it player and say OK. And that will save my selection in my file too. Oh, and of course we can see that I even missed something, so I'll hold Shift and circle it. But once you have your selection, all you have to do is hit the mask button, and everything else that's not in your selection goes away. The mask button is the little circle inside of a rectangle at the bottom of your layers panel. That's where it lives. Let's go back here to the basketball. You got your selection, hit the mask button. Everything else goes away. Let's do this on one more thing. Let's just go to a logo. Let's see, we've done the Shake Shack logo. Did the butterfly. Let's do this on a Polaroid. If I wanted to select one of these, I could try my quick selection, I could try my magic wand. This would be a good time to use my polygonal lasso tool. Let's say that I wanted to select this picture right here. All I would do, click, click, and the polygonal lasso tool makes selections that are straight lines. So I'm just kind of clicking, and then I will click all the way over here, and it will connect the points. Now, it's not completed until you go back to the beginning. Then once you have a selection, you can just hit the mask button, and everything else goes away. Not perfect, we can tell down there at the bottom, or maybe we can just call that a little bit of the shadow. But we now just have the selection. And we can move this picture wherever we wanted to, or we can hold the Alt-Option key and drag off tons of copies. Not going to do that. So that's how we would do that on that picture. Let's go to another picture. We'll close out a bunch of stuff. Let's go to this, because both your project and your lab work for this week involve selecting things and removing them from the background. So this is just some hand-drawn text. I'm going to use my image rotation tool to rotate this to be the right way. What I want to do is I want to select the letters and get rid of the paper, get rid of everything else. Your project for this week is to write something on a sheet of paper, or get somebody that has good handwriting to write something on a sheet of paper. I used somebody that told me they had good handwriting, but they obviously lied. Get them to write it on a piece of paper, and then either scan it or take a picture of it with your phone or a camera or whatever, email it to yourself, get it to Photoshop somehow, and then we're going to select the text and then put it on top of another picture. So here we have the word Photoshop. We could go through all the different selection tools. I know that in this case, it's probably going to work best if I use the magic wand tool. And I could try to select the background. It actually did a pretty okay job. Or I could try to select the letters themselves. Contiguous will be unchecked, and it did a pretty good job. So one more thing about the magic wand tool that's important to know is this little button right there, this little section in your options bar, and that's your tolerance. The higher your tolerance is, the more your magic wand tool will select. And the lower your tolerance is, the less it will select. 32, I believe, is the default. So I was trying to select the background at first, and it didn't get the whole thing. But if I change this from 32 to 50, and we'll leave contiguous unchecked, and now I click on the background, it did a pretty good job. It selected a little bit more. Let's Command or Control D and change it from 60 to 70. Click on it one more time. And that is pretty close to a perfect selection. Now, of course, this is the background that I have selected, so I'd have to go to Select Inverse to just get the layers selected. The trick to knowing if you have your background selected or if you have your actual object selected is to look at the edges of your canvas. If the edges of your canvas have marching ants on them, then you have the background selected instead, and you need to hit Select Inverse or Command or Control Shift I. Let's try this again. Just this time we will select just the text. Didn't do a perfect job. That selected a little bit too much. So let's change the tolerance from 70 to like 60. Click it. Still selected too much. Let's try 40. Command or Control D. Click it. And that's pretty close to perfect. You can tell that there's little bits floating around that are selected that I don't want to have selected, so I can switch to my lasso tool and Alt or Option to select them. So now I have all of my letters selected. I can hit the mask button, or you can just go to your Move tool, and we're just going to drag this on top of another picture. So let's open up another picture real quick. Let's go to a previous week. No, actually, let's go back to our butterfly. We'll end this week where we started it, with our good pal, the butterfly. Okay, and all I have to do is I can either copy and paste this layer, or I can drag and drop it, or we can duplicate it into another document, whatever you would like to do. I'm just going to drag it over here. Now I can let go, and we can put this Photoshop text wherever we would like. We could even free transform it to be bigger or to rotate it if I wanted to. And then one other fun thing you could do with your text is to add some layer styles to it. We'll talk more about layer styles later on, but they allow you to add a little bit of interest to stuff like text specifically, but a lot of vector shapes. So layer styles are under the Layer menu, and then under Layer Style. We have all of these right here, or you can hit FX down here at the bottom of your Layers menu, and then you have the same options. But I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, and we're going to click on Color Overlay. If I wanted to now, I could just apply a different color to this document instead of it being that black color. We'll turn the opacity up, and we'll make it whatever color we would like. Let's just make it red. You can even try utilizing different blending modes if you would like to as well. So here we have it. We've got our handwritten text on a picture. Now, ideally, this would have said butterfly or something like that. But in this video, we reviewed some of the selection tools, talked about what they did, and we discussed even more ways that you can use selection tools. Remember to save your selections if you need to. You can also load them over here. Remember to deselect things if you no longer need your selections. And then in your options bar, you have a lot of options depending on which tool that you have selected that will help you create very precise selections. That's it for this week.